The defaults that change the way your dimensions look and behave can be easily changed to suit your needs. If we go up here to the Edit drop-down menu and go down to Default Settings, in the Default Settings you'll find your Dimension Defaults. If I select Dimension Defaults and click on Edit, it'll open up the dialog for all the saved dimension defaults. Right now, the 1/4 inch scale dimension defaults are active. You can change the active dimension defaults by clicking on the drop-down here and selecting a different saved default set. You can also create your own saved dimension defaults. If I click on Copy, it'll copy the 1/4 inch scale dimension defaults. Here I can rename it by typing in a different name and then make changes to the defaults. I'll go ahead and cancel out of here, and we'll just edit the 1/4 inch scale dimension defaults by clicking on Edit. In your dimension defaults, you have the options for changing the line separation. The line separation here will affect the distance between the lines when you use the Baseline Dimension tool. The reach is the distance from where you draw your dimension line to the objects that it will locate. If I draw my line more than 24 inches away from this wall, it will not be able to locate and dimension to the wall. You also have line separation and line offset for your automatic dimensions. You also have options here for rounded value indicators, a plus or a minus after the number, or to show a tilde before the number. If we go here to Primary Format, this is where you can set up the format units. Right now my dimensions are using feet and inches as indicated by a quote and a double quote. If you want all of your dimensions to read in inches only, you can select inches only, or you can use metrics. You can also choose to use leading zeros or trailing zeros. As you can see here, my dimensions do not have trailing zeros. If they did, this would read 5 feet - 0 inches. And as you can see here, where I have only 8 inches, I don't have leading zeros for 0 feet 8 inches. You can also determine the smallest fraction that your dimensions will round to. As you can see here in my plan, this wall is 10 foot 11 1/16 of an inch from this wall. If I change my smallest fraction to 1/4 of an inch and click OK, you can see now that it reads 10 foot 11 1/4 inch. The recommended approach is to use a smaller fraction and then move the wall to precisely the dimension you want by selecting the wall and then clicking on the dimension and typing in the distance that you want. A quick way to open up your active dimension defaults is to double-click on the Dimension Tool's parent tool. In the Dimension Defaults under this Primary Format panel, you can see here that we can also position the text on a dimension line, either in the center of the dimension line as shown here, above the dimension line, or below the dimension line. I prefer my text to be above the dimension line. You can also add a secondary format. My primary format reads in feet and inches. If I add a secondary format, maybe in metrics, it'll add 2 lines of text for every dimension line. You can also determine in your dimension defaults how your dimensions will locate each object to place an extension line to. For my walls, this is set to dimension to the wall's dimension layer, which is typically the outside edge of the framing layer or structural layer of the wall. You also have other wall options: to dimension your interior walls at their centers, to dimension your walls at the primary wall side only, or to both sides. My dimensions are set to locate my cabinets at their sides and corners. My fixtures and appliances will be located at their centers. My furniture will not be located at all unless I check one of these boxes. Openings, like my doors and windows, are dimensioned to their sides. You can dimension to the rough opening, centers, or their casing. CAD objects, like lines, circles, and arcs, will be located at their sides and their ends and corners. My dimensions will also locate my call-out markers. I'll uncheck the boxes for primitive shapes, so my dimension tool will not be able to locate them at all. Framing is unchecked. I'll also uncheck electrical and plants, specifically in these 1/4 inch scale dimension defaults. You have settings here to locate elevations. These are settings specific to the story pole dimensions. Story pole dimensions will be covered in detail in another video. You also have settings for your extensions. Right now, mine are set to gap from the marked object. So between this walls dimension layer and the beginning of my extension, I'm allowing 3 inches. You can also select towards an object. So from the dimension line itself toward the object, you can give it a specific length. You also have length away from a marked object, which is the distance from the dimension line itself out away from the object. So this small extension here will go 3 inches past my dimension line. You can also determine what layer your dimensions will be placed on. When the 1/4 inch scale dimension defaults are active, my dimensions will be placed on the Dimensions Manual layer. As you can see here, there are several dimension layers. Each of these dimension layers is set up for a different saved dimension default. You also have options for the arrowheads used in your dimensions. I'll change the arrowhead style here, and you can also change the fill color for the arrowhead. I'll change it here to red. Now my arrowheads will look like this. You also have the option to change the size for your arrow. You can also select a text style for your dimension numbers. You can select one of these saved text styles, or you can create your own by clicking on the Define button, selecting one of these text styles, and copying it. Type in the new name for your new text style, and then you can edit that text style by clicking on Edit. You can select a different font. You can use text attributes like italics or bold. You can change the size and the orientation with the plan. Once you have your dimension defaults set up the way you want them, you can save them by saving the plan. You can also export and import dimension defaults. Exporting and importing defaults will be covered in more detail in a different video.